All right, as we're waiting for the last people to join us, we're going to start the session. Welcome everybody, and bonjour tout le monde. Can you see my screen correctly at the moment? Yeah. Um, so welcome. My name is Gigi Pascal. I am Innovation Facilitator at Partus, and for those who do not know Partus yet, we are a Dutch-based NGO platform convening over 100 members, but also their international partners and other change makers active in international cooperation. And through our innovation hub, we offer a playing field for people to power a transition towards more inclusive, equitable, and decolonial ways of working through learning and innovation. And we're grappling with issues that are relevant and emerging in these times. And one of them is obviously the question around what is the future of international cooperation? What are the new roles, and how do we grapple with these issues? And as we're asking ourselves and seeing that some systems that we've been working in are not fit, what are other ways of working? So today we're honored to share our space together with the Movement for Community-Led Development to cover their latest publication, We Power Our Own Change. And I think MCLD has really been on the forefront of powering and showing the solutions that community-led development can bring. And evermore, it's relevant that they've been asking themselves, what is the answer that we can give to the challenges that we're facing at these moments? So amidst all these challenges, I'm really happy that we've been able to gather different authors together that have been writing the book. And I can't wait to learn more about what they're going to share with us today. Before I hand it over, I just wanted to mention a couple of practical things. First of all, the session is being recorded. That's for the purpose of sharing this later for people that are not able to attend. And then secondly, there is an option for interpretation. So live interpretation is available in the lower right corner of your Zoom screen. And you can see a globe. And if you click on it, you can either choose for French and English. And please stay in these channels because there's also a French-speaking panelist or co-author. So then we can also hear the translation from French to English. If you have any questions around that, post it in the chat. We'll be able to support you technically as well. Then now I would like to hand it over to Gunjan Veda, who is the Global Secretary of the Movement of Community-Led Development and one of the co-authors. Welcome and take it away.
Thank you so much, Gigi. It's really a pleasure to be here. Hello, everyone. On behalf of MCLD, Elene, my co-editor, and all the authors here, very warm welcome and thank you for joining us today for this session. I am, as Gigi said, I'm Gunjan Veda. For those of you who don't know the movement is a majority world-led network of networks with over 3,000 local and community-based organizations from all around the world and their INGO allies. And I see some of, the members on the call here today. So it's wonderful to have all of you here today. We are very, very excited to actually have this book here because I think in the last few months, especially as all of us have been grappling with all the changes that are happening, in the world around us, from the cutting in funding by various bilateral agencies, to just the number of conflicts and natural disasters and everything that we are grappling with. More and more, I think the question we are hearing is, what is the future of our work? What is the future of our sector? What is the future of our organizations? What is the future for the values that we all hold dear? For us, I think those of us who are part of the book in the movement, the answer is very clear. For us, the future is community-led. And what we hope to do today is to share with you a little bit of why we think the future is community-led, why we feel that at a time where there seems to be more questions than answers, to be more challenges than solutions. We believe that the solutions already exist. The solutions have existed for a long time. Community-led development is the future, but it's something which has been there for many, many, many centuries in human society. And we would love to have that conversation with all of you today. So what we're going to do today is we will start off just to give you a sense of how we will spend our time together today. We'll start off with a quick conversation between Elene and I, where we will share a little bit about the framework of the book. What is community-led development from our perspective, the framing of the book and its relevance in today's time. And then we are going to actually have my colleague Luana here is going to be in conversation with different authors. So we have authors from Uganda, India, and Benin with us on the call today. So she's going to be in conversation with different authors to unpack a little bit of what does it look like in practice, and especially in the current times, right, that we are in. And then we are going to actually have a broader conversation with all of you on, we clearly think community-led development is the future, and clearly not everybody thinks that way. We would love to understand from you, what do you see as the future? What do you see as some of the challenges, with community-led development or with operationalizing it? So that's kind of how we are going to have spend our time together today. But before we do all of that, we are going to have, you know, the book that we are talking about today. This book is based on what we said are 9 dimensions of community-led development. And these 9 dimensions of community-led development have emerged after a lot of discussion, literature review, and stuff for us. But what's been very interesting is that every time we have a conversation on community-led development, we ask people, what do you think are these key characteristics of community-led development? What do you think are some of the key processes that are integral to community-led development? And it's always very, very interesting, and I think a learning experience for all of us to see how people in different parts of the world think about that word. And so we're going to have a very quick game. We are going to go into 4 breakout rooms. If you are a French speaker, do not choose the breakout room option. Stay in the main room. If you're not a French speaker, please say okay and join the breakout rooms. You will have 5 minutes. And what you need to do is you need to agree on as a group on 9 characteristics, on 9, what are those 9 elements of community-led development? We'll give you a clue. For us, 7 of them are characteristics, right? And 2 of them are just processes, processes without which you can't do community-led development. So we'll see how close we come to, or what are the different things that people think about with community-led development. So we have 5 minutes, and you have to come up with 9 dimensions of community-led development as a group. What do you agree on? If you're a French speaker, you stay here. If you're an English speaker, please join the group. And then we will share a Mentimeter link for your group to put their responses on. Gigi, do we want to give the Mentimeter link?
Yes, I am on it. I'm going to share it in the chat, so don't move yet as of now. And in
Okay,
a minute, the breakout rooms will also.
great. So you'll see the Mentimeter link. Any one person from your group can just put the final responses of your group on that Mentimeter. We'll see you back in 5 minutes, and then we'll share what we think are the 9 dimensions on which the book is based. Okay, I think people are going into the breakouts. Maybe when they come back, we can share, Gigi, the Menti for them to put on the poll. Okay, I guess we'll see everybody in 5 minutes. You should have received a pop-up notification to join a breakout room. If you're a French speaker, stay here. If you're not a French speaker, please select the pop-up. If you have,
Think about CLD. Hi, Gigi. We're trying not to cheat by sharing the answer.
No more people coming in.
so if the French speakers are in this room, if it's only the French speakers and authors, then authors don't speak and let the French speakers think of the 9 dimensions.
Okay.
The French speakers?
Les, les parlants de langue française, les francophones.
Okay, I don't think we have any French speakers actually, apart from the authors. Maybe that's the issue.
Yes, we have Ida is there also.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that's why this room is so silent. I hope the other rooms are not as silent.
Aida, vous êtes là?
Oui, bonsoir, monsieur
Oui, oui,
Rosso. Je suis connecté. Oui, c'est bon.
oui, d'accord. L'exercice, c'est de donner, disons, les 9 dimensions là, qui sont la
So the
charnière.
exercise is to give the 9 dimensions that
que
are key
l'exercice qui est
to
demandé par ça.
community-led development. That was the exercise that was asked to be done.
Ok, d'accord.
Voilà.
C'est un exercice qui est en cours actuellement, c'est ça?
Oui.
Ok.
For people who've just joined, we are just waiting for people to come back from the breakout rooms. They were doing a quick exercise to identify the dimensions of community-led development. But I think it's almost time for people to come back. Okay, I see the groups coming back. Fantastic. So Gigi posted a Mentimeter link in the chat. If one person from both the groups can just post on that link what you came up with. Or if it's easier, you can just paste it in chat. Okay, great. Common goal, trust, facilitation, good leadership, inclusion, accountability, resilience. Perfect. Well, thank you. So we will see which of these dimensions actually feature in the framework, and whether the thinking that we were having here and the thinking that we are having, we had that went into this group, into the book, how much do they align? But I think, Elene, I think we are seeing a lot of a lot of commonality and dimensions. So it gives me great pleasure to invite my very good friend, co-editor of the volume, president and CEO of Outreach International, Elene Coete.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gunjan. It is wonderful to be here. As Gunjan mentioned, my name is Elene, and I'm going to say it right back to you, Gunjan. It was also a wonderful privilege and honor to be working with you as a co-editor on this volume. Yes, so what you just said, Gunjan, and also the sharing coming out of our breakout groups are just very, very interesting. As Gunjan mentioned, we see a lot of dimensions and topics there that featured very, very prominently as dimensions also for us when thinking about community-led development. But, you know, Gunjan, something that we also see within the sharing backs and the feedbacks from the Mentimeter is that there are some similarities between things that people mention, but then there are also the odd ones out and there. Yeah, and there somebody thinks about community development in this way versus another person thinking in a different way. And if I remember correctly, Gunjan, that was something in the beginning of the MCLD history and also in the beginning of your work with MCLD that you also came across. This idea of people being curious about community-led development, but then talking about it in different ways and thinking about it in very diverse ways. Can you share a little bit about that collaborative, all of those thinkings and those dynamics and how that then led into the collaborative research, maybe?
Yeah.
Get us
So, you know, the book, the framework that we use in the book that we are going to be sharing with you shortly to see how much alignment there is and how different are we in our thinking of community-led development. It was very interesting. I joined the movement in 2019. The movement was launched in 2015. I joined in 2019. And my task when I joined the movement was to look at the impact of community-led development. And I was like, great. So I asked everybody to share their reports about evaluation reports on programs that are community-led from their work. And the question that everybody came back with was, sure, how do you define community-led development?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, but we are the movement for community-led development. Surely we have an answer to that, don't we? And it turns out we didn't. It turns out that, you know, depending on which part of the world we were in, what type of organization we were, whether a small local CBO or INGO, we all had very different understandings of community-led development. And we realized then that even before we talk of impact, what we need to arrive at is a common understanding of what do we mean when we say community-led development? And what does it look like in practice, right? What does it look like in the work that we do? How does it show up? And so we asked people who would like to volunteer, and we created a collaborative research team because one of the basic principles of community-led development is working with the assets, the resources, the knowledge that exist, right? So we decided to apply the principles of community-led development, and we started with the knowledge base, the assets that we already had within the movement. Over 100 people from different organizations from all over the world worked together for 2.5 years. For 2.5 years, pro bono, no funding, just our own resources of time, enthusiasm, knowledge, wisdom, experience. We pulled it together to create this framework of community-led development and to come up with a definition of. And then because this was all practitioners, they were practitioners from small local organizations in Malawi and Uganda and Benin and India. They were practitioners from big INGOs across the world. They were practitioners from local governments in Kenya and Uganda. They were practitioners from, a couple of even funding agencies, right? The question we kept asking ourselves is, we don't want a definition. We want to understand in practical terms, what does it mean? What would it look like? And so we came up with a tool, which is called the Participatory CLD Assessment Tool, which is available in 10 languages and is really, Elene, the framework of the book and contains these 9 dimensions, which we started with discussions with practitioners, established through research that they were indeed some of the key characteristics of community-led development. and came up with it. But I think what it also did for us, Elene, and you were part of that team too, Elene, where we were doing this work, was just this how community-led development would look different in different places, with different circumstances and different types of organizations. And yet there would be some commonalities, some common characteristics and processes that would, underpin it. And the realization that CLD is not a goal, but it's actually a continuous, very intentional journey where throughout the step way, you try to become more community led, right? But Aline, I wonder if you want to talk about those 9 dimensions that we were asking people about.
Absolutely. I'm gonna ask to share the slides again, Gigi, maybe if you don't mind, because we have a slide and this is kind of like a reveal for all of you who had your breakout groups to see to what extent your dimensions that you listed compare and how they compare to ours. But as Gunjan mentioned, we then came up with 9 different dimensions. 2 of those are processes, and the other 7 are more, you can think about them more as characteristics of community development. And as Gunjan mentioned, these dimensions then became very much the framework for the book. It provided the structure into which we then situated different case studies. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But here you will see the dimensions. At the top, if we can start at the top, and that does not mean it's the most important. And that's also why we like the idea that it's all in a circle, because they are so independent to one another, these different dimensions, right? They are all working in different ways and reflecting in different ways and interacting in different ways with one another. But at the top, we have sustainability. That is a key component and a key characteristic of community development. It's not only a goal to which community development interactions work toward, but it's also at the forefront of why we do community development and why there's a big argument for community development. Exit strategies was another dimension linked to that, and that's the idea that when we do interventions, when we have interventions, and those interventions are maybe facilitated by external actors, that there should be a very clear period and a clear exit strategy in mind so that people can understand what the terms of partnerships are with external actors. There's accountability. Accountability is not only one directional, but multi-directional. So who holds who accountable? If it's an intervention, an external intervention being facilitated, who keeps those facilitators accountable and what accountability practices and processes are in place? There's responding to local context, and Gunjan mentioned that in passing just earlier. Community development must always, and it is, responsive to community and to local contexts, meaning that the same intervention might look completely different in different contexts. The same processes might manifest in different ways across different contexts, globally, nationally, locally, and so on. Collaboration is a key component as well. We need to collaborate with each other through networks that we already have, and also establishing new networks. And with collaboration, one key aspect that really came forth for us is concepts around social capital, right? Because through collaboration, social capital is not only the mechanism that drives collaboration, but it is also then a result, right? An end goal or an end product of collaboration, that we build strong connections with one another, that we build bridging, bonding capital, and then also stronger networks and connections with one another. And those connections also link back to working with subnational governments, if those are available for collaboration. And then toward the top of the circle, we have local knowledge and resources, that should be incorporated and always be present in community development processes. And then, of course, the big one is participation, inclusion, and voice. and asking questions around who is participating, whose voices are heard in participatory processes, and do they have choice in the extent to which they are included, or to the extent they are raising their voices or not. And then the last two that are in blue colors are the processes. So facilitation is a key process within community development. And then lastly, monitoring evaluation activities, and asking ourselves to what extent are those monitoring evaluation processes community-led and driven and owned by those at the forefront of community development. Okay, but Gunjan, then we had these dimensions, and we had them as a nice framework, and we realized, okay, this is all well and good. We have these dimensions. We have now come together as a community development community of practitioners. We have ways that we can now use the same language to talk about and to how to define community development. But how do you do it? What does it look like? What does community development look like in practice? And then one gap that Gunjan and I kept on seeing, and that we continue to come back at, is we don't really have a place where these case studies, or where case studies of community development are documented, to where people can go and read more and learn more about what these dimensions look like in practice. Gunjan, and that then very much led to us coming together and coming up with the idea of the book and sourcing them out.
Absolutely, Elaine. So one of the challenges even within the sector, and especially I think a lot of you probably, this wouldn't be new to you, when the pandemic happened, right? COVID-19, and suddenly everybody realized communities are first responders to a crisis. At least in the movement, we got a lot of people coming to us and asking, okay, so we understand that CLD is important and communities are first responders. What do we do about this, right? And the reality is that these 9 dimensions, simple as they sound, are actually not that simple. And putting them into practice is not easy. There are challenges to it, there are learnings to it. And we wanted to unpack that. We wanted to make sure that we are prepared as we are going into this, we understand the challenges, but also see why it is so important. And that's how we looked at, creating and curating the book, of finding organizations, of finding practitioners, of finding work from across the world, which reflects the how to of each of these dimensions, because they are distinct. But I'm sure the minute you see them, the first question that probably comes to mind is that they're definitely interrelated, right? Can you truly have, collaboration without true participation, and, accountability without, or facilitation, without proper facilitation? Can you actually have inclusion and participation happening? So these dimensions were all interconnected, but each of them also requires a lot of work. And so we also had a wide, we realized that community-led development is not new, right? In fact, the opening chapter in the book is a practitioner's history of community-led development, where we look at the different ways from across the world, from India to Sri Lanka to China to Burkina Faso, right? Across the world, how community-led development has been practiced or has been present over the years. But one of the things that, so we knew that community-led development happens in countries everywhere. It's happening in America, it's happening in Europe, it's happening in Africa, in Asia. Where would we focus on? We decided very intentionally for this volume, because it was meant for international development and humanitarian practitioners, right? We decided very intentionally to focus on the majority world. So apart from the Aga Khan chapter, where we do have, we have Apoorva here from Aga Khan Foundation with us, and you'll hear from him shortly. But all the other chapters, the work that they talk of is actually in the majority world. Aga Khan does talk about work in Portugal also. So there is a little bit of showcasing how it bridges across. But we intentionally selected that. And then we realized that one of the strengths of community-led development is inclusion. So we very honestly believe that there is a place for everybody in the CLD ecosystem. There is a place for INGOs, there's a place for local organizations, there is a place for academics and researchers, there is a place for local governments and stuff. And we wanted to bring the richness and diversity that comes when we bring these different stakeholders together. So amongst the authors, you will see, if we go to the next slide, you will see amongst the authors, we have academics, we have amongst the authors community leaders, we have local community-based organizations, we have people from big INGOs. It's a very mixed group of people from all over the world, coming from various different backgrounds, having one thing in common. They are all PhDs in life, right? Because they've all experienced this in different ways. In fact, Routledge traditionally only publishes PhDs. And I remember, Elene, do you remember when we first went to them and they asked, yeah, but are all your authors PhDs? And we were like, absolutely. They're all PhDs in life. Does anything else matter? And they agreed to publish that, right? For us, that was a big win to be able to directly have the different voices talk about their experiences and how-tos of community-led development. And this is part of why we think CLD is, and we can take off the slide, but I think for us, this is part of why we think community-led development is the future and is so, so, so relevant in the moment. Because what we do have, with us and around us is a very fractured world and a very fractured sector, where a lot of the conversation has been about us versus them. We work in silos. But a lot of community-led development is about recognizing that each of us brings in special knowledge, strengths, resources. Each of us has a place in this ecosystem and a role in creating the world we want to. Now, we may have been playing roles we are not best suited for, right? Traditionally, which is part of the problem and the power dynamics that we all encounter and talk about all the time when we speak of issues ranging from decolonization to shifting the power. That it's all about how we have captured roles which are probably not best suited for us, right? Or we've been cast into those roles because of the way funding flows or myriad other political reasons. But the reality is that in community-led development, and this is what we think the world needs today, is a recognition that we all come with resources. We all have a place to, play, to transform this ecosystem, to transform our world. And actually, that transformation cannot happen if everybody is not included. So again, in many ways, those basic principles and the 9 dimensions that you saw, which is the framework for this book, what the chapters are based on, what to us is the framework for community-led development, for us is also the pathway towards creating a more equitable and just world where every person has a voice in decisions that affect their lives. Because if that does not happen, if communities around the world and organizations and civil society continues to be dependent on fixed pots of income and aid and assistance which is coming, then that can go away anytime. And where does that leave us then? So we need to think resilience. We need to think sustainability. And that requires building the muscle to be able to do the work collectively with what we have. And that is community-led development. But Elene, I think now we should probably hear from our authors a little bit more about the work and how these dimensions come in. So I would love to invite my colleague Luana Eskenazi, who is from Buenos Aires, who is our Latin America and Caribbean coordinator. Luana, over to you.
Thank you, Gunjan. I would like to start with the fact that I'm very happy to be here today. I find all the authors CLD champions, and they are very passionate about CLD. So it's my honor to introduce Apoorva Oza from the Aga Khan Foundation, working in rural India, and my colleague also Pascal Djohossou from MCLD Benin, and also MCLD coordinator of West Africa, and Nixon Ochatre, the founder of Amani Initiative in Uganda, an organization that works for the protection of children and women, and Ida Yabo Kossou from ITISA, where they promote training, entrepreneurship, and volunteerism within the youth of Benin. So, to kick us off, I would like to start with Nixon. Are you there? I would like for you to tell us a little bit about your chapter and why you think CLD is the future.
Thank you very much, Luana, for the introduction, and greetings to everyone. My name is Nixon Ochatre. Maybe just go straight into my chapter. Our chapter is on our issues around the power of synergy, focusing on how unlocking sustainable development through collaboration in Uganda. Two critical things come out of three things come out of the chapter title itself, issue of unlocking. One is that we understand that within our communities, we already have structures already within us. But most times, we tend to foresee or underlook the structures. It exists. So the opportunity, how do you unlock them? How do you use them? But not only just unlocking those structures, how do you ensure that through that, you're able to create sustainable development, largely through collaboration? In a sense of the picture in Uganda, that up to the lower levels of government, from the village to the parish level, there are already structures in place. Our work is around work with schools, work with schools facilities, we work with schools communities. I'll give an example of a school environment. Within a school, we know that there are structures such as the Parents-Teacher Association. These structures bring on board the parents, the teachers. So how do you collaborate with that structure, given the fact that it's there? We understand that within the schools already, we have senior women teachers who are responsible for ensuring that the children in the school are safe. How do you collaborate with that structure? When you go to the health centers as well, the structures existing. But the book is largely focusing on how we leverage the structures in the communities. Many times development moves into a space knowing that that I'm going to create something new, and looking at the fact that within the community there's something already happening. So for us, our approach to development is that we move into a community, knowing that within the communities there are structures existing. It could be the local leaders, it could be the religious leaders, it could be the cultural leaders, it could be the systems already there. The idea is how do you move into a community, not just to change what is there, but directly collaborate with that. We believe that through that, it has enabled us to be more sustainable, in that we're able to, these structures, even though the project goes away, these structures will continue existing even after the project ends. So the book is around leveraging on how do we use what we find in the communities. We have this saying in our work, use what you have to get what you want. So through that, the structures are there. The issue is how do we leverage that, each other works out. So in terms of the future of CLD, I think as an institution who has experienced CLD for the last 10 years, the future of CLD is more than it has always been. For us, we've been doing this for the last 10 years. So right now, there's a lot of interest into CLD because of the shrinking funding space. That is one clear factor. But also we know the fact that the communities we serve understand their issues now more than ever. So that's why we need to also be able to have them take the responsibility managing these issues. Thank you.
Thanks, Nixon. That was great. And now moving on to Pascal. So Pascal, your chapter is about collaboration. Could you tell us a little bit of what you think it takes to create and sustain collaboration in CLD?
Yes, thank you, Luana. Hi, everyone. Yeah, this is a real privilege for me to take the floor and share how our MCLD, and particularly CLD Benin, is a place of collaboration. Yes, first, if we look at the chapter related to CLD Benin in the book, you will see that the title is To Transform System, Start with the Heart. CLD Benin story of collective power and collective impact. Our journey in CLD Benin starts with the following benchmark to move forward, and all is about interconnectedness. Interconnectedness of the stakeholders let me mention that we have more than thousands member organization, private sector, civil society organization within our our CLD Benin. It is really about interconnectedness to break the silos point of view and to get really committed to move forward, working together. The second is also the interconnectedness of the thematic area where we want to collaborate. And let me mention that in CLD Benin, we have 5 prioritized thematic areas: agriculture and nutrition, governance, well-being, climate change, environment, and local development, local economy development, and so on. But if we look at all this, those thematics are really interconnected, saying that the way the government is improved and relevant could really impact nutrition and so on and so on. So I'll stop there, but we could develop more, seeing the interconnection in the thematic. The third one is commitment to collaborate in terms of co-creation, in terms of resource mutualization, in terms of solidarity, in terms of volunteerism, based on resources available to make sure that we start on a resilience basis to support our journey. Those benchmarks are crucial for us, and those are supporting the collaboration in our MCL. But practically, what we do is to share those interconnected dimension of the state of our tool, making sure that we have the same basis to collaborate. If we want to make the collaboration effective, do we share the same basis to collaborate? That's why one of our priority also is to disseminate the tool within our association, making sure that we have the prerequisites to move together. Those are really important, and we share those through training. Ida is there, and the foundation is one of the stakeholders trained on the tool. He could let know what we learned, she learned, how the tool has been available. And I could share also how the tool has been available for us to co-create and working together, particularly during COVID-19 time, when our tool, our poster has been shared with the National Association of Community Benin. I could share also how the tool has been valuable when we were in the campaign to share with stakeholders to support communities with superfood, to support communities, mentioning how we could use high valuable vegetable for better health, a better statute, the nutritional statute of communities. I could share more initiatives, but we call them initiative. Why? We call them initiative because the tool, by really activating collaboration, leaders, not saying we don't have any resources, so we don't move, but the tool and the MCLD approach support being proactive. We don't have resources. What do? We plan. That's why we call them initiative. They are not programs. They are not yet projects, but they translate community aspiration that we hold with them. And we have many. Briefly, I will say that's how we support collaboration within our CLD Benin. Thank you.
Sorry, I was monitoring the time and I was not hoping for that sound to be there. Thanks, Pascal. It sounds like all these points are so important: interconnectedness, commitment to build a good foundation to move forward together, the togetherness. So many good inputs from what you said. Thank you so much. And I would like to give a space also to Ida. And I understand that Ida will speak in French. Ida, to you, what are some of the challenges you find to operationalizing collaboration, especially in a resource-constrained environment like Gunjan was mentioning that we have nowadays. So we'll give some time. We have to move to the interpretation box, right?
Yeah, everybody should select English.
Bien, bonsoir à tous.
Hello to everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be able to talk with you here on this extremely interesting topic. It is an honor and a pleasure for me to represent my foundation, ITISA from Benin, that works on questions linked to entrepreneurs and women and training. We had a possibility to join this movement. And after having signed the partnership with CLD, within our foundation, we could have training on the tool about which we are speaking today. And this training has changed our approach to seeing the projects that we are doing on the ground. And thanks to this training today, we were able to realize that the collaboration with communities, the collaboration with women with whom we are working, it is something that should be put forward. The communities need the immediate response to the reality in which they live. And collaboration asks for time, needs time. The interaction with the communities of young people and women, we need to build solid relationships. We need to see how to confront ourselves with their realities, with the resources that we have. Our particularity in our foundation is that we don't only have the founders to finance our activities and our projects. What is the process? Is we can say to explain to the community is that changing something in a community, in a village, in a city, that starts from our efforts in our foundation, but also from the efforts of the community itself. For example, last year, we have started a project in a department here in Benin, and through this project, we tried to give to the communities the rooms for trainings. We tried to provide them with trainers and what the communities did from their part. So they gathered together. They managed to find the finances to come to these training centers. And not only they found a way to arrange the transportation, but also the food. So they figured out that they were coming to be trained, and we were providing for them some elements, some resources, but then from their side, they also collaborated, participating with the resources that they have at their disposition. And in that way, we can change what we want to change, thanks to it, through our projects. Concerning our experience, our collaboration with the CLD in the past months, that is it.
Thanks, Ida, for that. It's true that there are so many resources in the communities already, and it is about starting the work together and being creative and acknowledging all the resources that we already have. Thank you for that. Now, I would like to invite Apoorva, and I know you have a lot of experience in the CLD field, so you are the perfect person to give some advice on what advice you would give to people to work in a community-led way, and what are the pitfalls you would warn them against? So advice and to start, and then pitfalls.
Advice is okay. I think all of us who are practitioners and work with communities, first of all, we are very humbled by that process, because what happens is that you as a young person, and I started off as a very young person. I was an engineer, I was a management graduate, so the whole education system unfortunately teaches you that some degrees are knowledge, and the more degrees you have, you're more knowledgeable, and maybe even you think you're wise or something, right? And then all of that very fast comes crashing down, because you realize that there is so much you don't know, and there's so much you need to learn. And I think, therefore, young community organizers, especially very highly qualified ones, I keep on telling them that, your degree and, is like a garland. You had it, you won it, but when you go to the field, please leave the garland at home and then go to the community. Don't allow that garland of education to become a noose around which then you don't break out, and it chokes you. It stops you from learning, right? And unfortunately, in many of our countries, the garland has become a noose, and it blocks the thinking, blocks the creativity. So that's one, is that it's not your knowledge, your specialized knowledge is important, but there's something much more there, and you need to learn and that. So that's less advice number one. Otherwise, we sometimes then you get very upset that I know so much and I'm not using it, so you get frustrated. And I think you should say, I'll add when it adds value, I will use it. But when there is something more of value outside, I will use that. So you need to be very, very clear about that, humble about that. The second advice you say is that eh, don't be too serious. Don't take the burden of the world on your shoulders and go with a scowling face and oh, this poverty, this and that. Communities are living with what they have, and they're enjoying life. They have festivals, they laugh, they sing, they drink, they eat. Even if they have very little food, they enjoy that food. So to be with them, be part of their joy also. You're not only there to sort of be very serious and solve their problems. They don't want you to do that. They enjoy themselves. They know the problem is there. You work with them, solve the problem, but spread joy. And my belief is that if you are not happy internally, you cannot spread happiness, right? And at the end of the day, what are we doing? We are sort of spreading happiness, some joy, some spark somewhere. That's all we end up doing, right? The community does everything else on its own. You are sometimes the spark, and therefore, for you to be the spark, you have to be a happy person, and be content with what you are. And the third thing is I think is that be perseverant. To me, the greatest quality of the greatest community mobilizers I know has been their sheer persistence. They, everything seems very bleak. There is conflict, or the resources are not there, and you work very hard, and nothing really moves sometimes, and you tend to give up. But if you're persistent, and if your intentions are good, change does happen. In some communities, it happens very fast. Some communities takes more time, but stick to it, and change will happen. So I think I'll stop the advices. It's a bit awkward giving advice. Um, the sorry, the second question was on the pitfalls,
On the
right?
pitfalls, yes.
I think the pitfalls are that, and that we've said it in our chapter. It is that the world and the education system and everything else now values efficiency far more than empowerment, and therefore efficient processes become far more important than empowering processes. And therefore, you win in the short term. Your project gets done, the money gets spent, the donor is happy, your boss is happy. It's but it's very short term. So if you've not really empowered the community, you will have only short-term gains. The project is over, you walk away, the whole thing starts collapsing. 2 years later, you don't see a sign of that, right? So to me, that's one pitfall of excessive emphasis on efficiency and burn ratios and all that stuff. So that's one pitfall. The second pitfall is that uh, you become so close that you don't let go. And I've seen that with some of the best people, that you, in a way, that's your strength, that you're close to the community. But if you're so close that their dependency on you is not only material but also emotional, uh, and in every way, or intellectual, then you are doing a disservice, because then you've not really you don't you then you can't walk away, and then it becomes very complex. So I think, be very clear that thus far, and then they are on their own. They will be, they'll fall down from the cycle, and they'll get up and then do that stuff. But make sure that you have you do walk away and distance yourself. Be friendly, be affectionate. No, all that is fine, but don't overstay your welcome, so to say. Yeah, yeah, that's I think the second pitfall. And the third pitfall is money. Is that, don't please assume that money is solving all the problems, and therefore more money, the more you are solving anything. You are not. I think there is an. It's like a plant. When you put water, it needs an adequate number of water. But if you put overwater it, the roots die. And I think so many projects I see in the world, while there is underwatering is also a problem, but overwatering is also another problem. That we think that everything is money, and then volunteerism, their role, their space to speak, it's all messed up, because then they are trying to get more money from you, and you think that you can buy their volunteerism through money, and then the whole relationship is not community led, it's donor led or money led, and that finishes the process. Yeah, so I'll stop it.
Thank you so much. So much food for thought. I want to take notes, but I wanted to also pay attention. So thank you so much, Apoorva. And now for our final question, Nixon, back to you. The last question for this conversation is there a role for INGOs in CLD? This is a tough one.
It's a very tough question. I've always faced that question wherever I am. I just have one simple answer. Yes, there's a critical role for different NGOs in the face of conflict involvement, but the roles have to shift just from one of direct control to one of facilitation, support, and partnership. Under that, there's around 6 things which I could propose. One is around capacity strengthening. I think most cases, I just think capacity strengthening is around top-down training. But for us, as we go on the ground, it's around coaching, around mentorship, around moving the journey of capacity strengthening together, not just providing trainings. The aspect around that is that in terms of resource motions and channeling, as communities, unfortunately, we don't have the spaces to access resources wherever they are. So we believe that INGOs have a critical role to play to ensure that they're able to support communities with necessary resources. Because it is lying to ourselves that we're able to access the resources. Because we may do the work at the community, but sometimes we require the resources. And for that, we need to collaborate with INGOs. The issues around advocacy and policy influence. When I start development, no matter what it is still influenced on what happens in the UN, those policies which is set up there. Unfortunately, as community structures, sometimes it's tricky for us to access the stability. So INGOs have a critical role to collaborate with communities to ensure that the policies at the international level are directly speaking to the issues of the communities. The issues around this sharing and safeguarding, it's critical we know that as communities, for us to know how to implement the programs, to know what to do for the ground. But sometimes in doing that, the aspects of the risk in terms of risk management, that role has to be critically integrated in. For us, what we know to do well is implementing programs. That's something which needs to mutually appreciate. That sometimes when communities take responsibility and accountability, the managing of the government, to some extent, it moves them away from what they do well, which is addressing their own problem. So we believe that that's a space that INGOs can still play within the space that is discussing around. Lastly, I think just going to brief, the space is there with the INGOs, but should be shooting more risk from conflict, the one of coaching, support, and it's thank you very much. Instead of background music from my side, I apologize for that.
No problem. Thank you so much. And yeah, definitely. So if I'm hearing correctly, there's a role to play, but there's also a lot of rethinking and reshaping to do of INGOs. Okay, so now I'm going to hand it to Gigi, and we're going to watch a video. Thanks so much to our amazing.
You bring together a diverse group of people and pool together their knowledge, their experiences, their learnings. That is what our world needs right now, because no one player or part of the system can actually bring about the transformational changes we are talking about. It requires each one of us. And that is what the book showcases to me, that if we are able to really build on our individual strengths in a collective manner, we can do it.
Our quest and the quest for community-led development was seen by practitioners always as a movement for liberation, as a movement to end colonialism. It's not just a better way to do development.
What we have learned over the years is actually getting ourselves engaged with communities in a different way that build spaces so that they themselves can use their own voice. Community-led development interventions that are adaptable, flexible, and thrive on equity, consensus, and partnership actually empower the community.
Successful projects, they don't look the same. Like when the program seems to be more successful was when the communities took the program and rearranged it in the way that it works for the communities.
Within each of our communities, there's someone who has expertise. But unfortunately, most of these structures usually work in silos. How do you leverage the power within the communities? We know it is there, and that is what our chapter directly feeds into us.
We look at the network in Benin, asking everyone, are you really happy with the way we are implementing development? If you are not satisfied with just one single aspect, you are welcome to MCLD.
There is a need for mutual respect. You need to sort of have equity and pluralism embedded in your approach. Then give priority to the empowering process over the efficient approach. NGOs and project managers love efficiency and sacrifice empowerment at the altar of efficiency. And this says that to create good community organization, empowering is more important than efficiency.
It just so happened that Engineers Without Borders was looking for someone like me to do a project in Guatemala. They wanted to essentially do community-led development, and I was essentially the facilitator for all of this. And I think part of my message is, constant adjustment, more time, and development organizations of whatever size and shape usually don't plan that. The best development is not constricted or constrained by such limitations.
ABCD, or asset-based citizen-led development, addresses the internalized powerlessness and dependency of community members. Realize that they have assets, strengths, and capabilities valuable to their own well-being and the well-being of the whole community.
We were dedicated and committed to community-led development from the beginning, but what we did not realize is the depth of dynamics between the international and the local. Our chapter is about that journey. We wrap up by explaining when we did move out of the way, the successes and progress were enormous.
I thought the constellation SALT approach would work really well. And here we are using it with 12 NGOs in South Asia. So the NGOs are assessing their own progress. And our role is to trust the capacity of people, deeply listen, appreciate, and learn from their experience.
We try to narrate the story of Sarvodaya, its vision, its philosophy, its approach, the model and everything, and to emphasize the spirit of transformation, which is exemplified by the theme that we used, we build the road builds us. Because we try to achieve a physical objective, but in the process, we transform ourselves spiritually and based on our values.
If you have an idea, and you seek out folk with energy, with like-minded energy toward establishing something, you can get things done. It's just possibility. And this for me is just the beginning of such possibilities.
Luana, you're muted.
Oh, now, does everybody hear me? Thanks for the video. Here we see some of the authors are here present and others that were not here today. And yeah, I think we will be sharing also the link for the book soon. And now we have we would like to open the floor for everybody to participate, to have a more broad conversation. And so my first question to break the ice would be, what's coming up for you? And do you have experiences already of CLD that everything that was shared today reminds you of? Do you have any projects, or are there other forms of CLD with maybe other terms, more local language with that are referenced in a different way? Maybe not CLD, but they're very much CLD. So yes, these are the opening questions. So whoever wants to open the mic or put in the chat, it's welcome. Oh, there it is, the link to the book. And of course, questions are welcome. Yes, Gunjan.
As nobody is speaking up, I'm going to ask a question of the folks who are in here today with us. We clearly believe CLD is the way forward. We have been very committed to bringing it not just to broader, we want to take this to broader audiences. We want to take this to students. We want to take this to practitioners so that there is an alternate way of thinking about what we do and how we get to the world we want to see together, right? But I'm very curious for those of you, some of you probably engage in CLD, some of you don't probably, right? I'm very curious to hear how you see and what you see as the role of CLD, especially in the current environment that we are in. Would this be something that seems meaningful to you? Would this be something that seems even more impossible in the current environment? Just very curious.
Thanks, Gunjan. We have one hand up. Tosi, do you want to open your mic? We want to hear you.
Ok, ok. Merci et je remercie d'abord
Thank you.
MCLD
Thank you so much for MCLD
travail
for your hard work.
impeccable. D'abord, je suis le directeur de l'ONG ADET.
First of all, I am the director of ADET, of the ONG ADET,
Les ODD.
and I'm part of those who are innovating the ODD with the United Nations.
Les ODD disent que la localisation des ODD est la
the
clé
development goals are saying that the development goals are the key of the good implementation in the world. So when we are talking about localization, we speak about communities.
Ces communautés n'étaient pas organisées.
In the past, these communities were not organized because for the development issues.
Le colonialisme,
as we know,
le colonialisme ou bien dans tous les pays,
the colonialism that was in some countries, they were structured in a way that there is a ministry, something is organized, and then there are the locals who are hosting them. And we know that this ministry is this ministry is that. But if, first of all, we take the example of the communities they don't have a place where to gather themselves to talk about the important subjects or to conduct activities. They don't have anything of it. So the NGOs and the civil society in general, there are many people and each of them operates in their sector. But if we take the development goals, they have the three bases: social development, economic development, and environment development. And also the technological innovation that follows. So the goals are saying that no one should be left behind. So that means that in the communities, everyone should be taken into account individually. So we should first of all create the structures. For example, that in Togo here we have the example of the citizens. So to take the example of the citizens with those three dimensions of the Sustainable Development Goals. Today we talked about responsibility, accountability. When we are sending the money inside the community, we need to see who takes care of it, how everything went. We need to be sure that the community is okay with it. That's accountability. And that is why we should create a structure so that these people have something to work on. If, for example, you are responsible of the social development and you would be trained on it and you would be acting in the sustainable development in the social sector with some information and in your projects that you are following. Without this, you will be lost. The money will be irrigated and it will be lost. Because we should always be accountable for each dollar that is invested in the sustainable development locally. We have talked about collaboration. If there are these kind of centers, we can see that the people can collaborate with the local authorities and the scientific community. For example, the associations of teachers, of parents, etc., and other specialists for the development in this sector. I think that I have spoken a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We have a comment and a question in the chat, so I wanted to also address. Thank you for your inputs. So Jose Luis Doyle, I don't see the full name, sorry, says, CLD is and has always been the way forward. It takes a mind shift for many people, especially donors, who feel they have control as they also have to report to higher levels. So has MCLD or have members seen shifts in thinking of donors when having conversations with their donors or larger INGOs? So it's not a question. So has MCLD seen shift? And what was it that helped shift people's mindset? This is I was also thinking about the mindset when Pascal was speaking, when Apoorva was speaking. There is a big part of it that is about the mindset of everybody, of the communities, but also of the funders. Who would want to maybe give an answer or try it at least to this question? It's not easy.
I can share a little bit from the MCLD side what we have seen, but I'm also curious. I mean, Elene, you also have funders and donors, and you also arrange for CLD on what that has been. But you're absolutely right. There is this mindset. CLD requires more than anything else. It requires trust, right? And that trust is so very difficult to bring in because we have been conditioned to think and to trust people who think like us, people who have degrees and, qualifications from places that we value because we have been there or we aspire to be there, right? And those challenges are there. But I do think it's a process. So what we found at, MCLD is that one, it takes time. So for us, typically with funders, traditional funders, whether it's foundations or whether it's bilaterals, we used to do a lot of work with USAID when there was USAID, and it took time, right? It took us time. But over a period of 4 or 5 years, we saw some real changes to the extent that they announced communities being in the driver's seat as one of their aspirations for 50% of their programs, right? So it does happen, but it's a process of almost accompaniment. I think what we forget is that, oftentimes funders think about how do you develop the capacity of local organizations to get the money? What we try to do is have a mindset of how do we develop the capacity or strengthen the capacity of funders to be able to work with local organizations and to trust in communities. And it is a process of accompaniment. It is a process of so for us, we start by engineering conversations. We start by, we're doing it right now with OECD. In 2 weeks' time, we are organizing a conversation for OECD to listen directly to community-based local organizations, to understand what the needs are and just come in a listening mode, right? So it starts with that. Then we gradually build in that, okay, if you're coming to listen, it is your responsibility to provide feedback on what did you take away from it? What change did you make and not make, and what challenges? So we open a channel of communication, right? Doesn't always work, I will say that, but we've seen that whenever it has worked, it has been a process of accompaniment. And very often it has been about finding the 1 or 2 people within these funding organizations, because at the end of the day, organizations are made of people, right? And there are people in every type of organization who understand, who are committed, who want to change, or who want to change the way the organization works. And very often it's exactly what we do at CLD at the community level, where you find the community influencers and champions You find the influencers and champions within those funding agencies, and then accompany them as they lead the battle within that agency.
Thanks, Gunjan. I think we are in the nick of time, right? I think we should.
Yeah, unless somebody else wants to come in. I think we wanted to just maybe move towards the close in the interest of time, but I don't know, Elaine or anybody, if you had any other things you want to add to how do you convince funders on the mindset shift?
Yeah, thank you, Gunjan. I can just quickly add to what you were saying. Trust needs to be built. And one way of building trust is through accountability, right? Having accountability processes in place, building those accountabilities, setting them into place. And then, as we always discuss in community development, multi-directional forms of accountability. And as soon as people start keeping each other accountable on responsibilities, on shared responsibilities, then trust emerge. And it's a long-lasting, it's a sustainable form of trust. And that is why accountability is such a key aspect for me in forms of community development. It is through accountability that you get collaboration that is shared, right? That you get participation that is meaningful and that carry weight. So, and if you can establish those deep, meaningful pathways toward trust, that is when you create meaningful partnerships. And through those meaningful partnerships, then you create long-lasting forms of resource flows, whether that's in-kind resource flows, whether that's resource flows that happen at a local level, and then to come back to the conversation around funding, that kind of thing. So just wanted to add that. Thank you, Gunjan.
Thanks, Elaine. I think if there is no other question and no other comment from anybody, one of the things that we did want to do was we wanted to ask you, the book came out, as Elaine mentioned at the beginning, because one of the things we often got asked was, how do we do this? Okay, we understand this is a thing to do, but how do we actually, what does this mean for me as an INGO? What does this mean for me as a local organization, right? And so we wanted to bring the book out as a way for people to see the how of it. But we would be very curious to see that what do you think is needed to convince people that this is the way forward? What else is missing? What else is needed? How can people who support CLD, do CLD, believe in CLD, take this belief to bring about a broader mindset shift amongst the international development humanitarian community?
And Gunjan, I want to add there too, that is a big question and a meaty question too. And if folk don't in the moment have things that come to mind, I want to suggest and recommend and also offer, Gunjan, that they also send us emails and we can continue the conversation following in response to that. But we, as Gunjan was saying, we really want to invite you to think through how can we support you? What are the needs going forward in making, is practices of CLD accessible to you? Is it still a construct that feels very intangible? Is it a dream for you if you find yourself within situations where you want your practices to become more CLD and you are dreaming toward that? Are there ways that we as a community can support you in reaching those dreams and work with you in finding pathways toward that? Because Gunjan, it's not easy, hey? And I know Nixon, Pascal, Ida, you all, it's not easy to do community development. And so we've walked the road and we are continuing to walk the road. And we welcome anybody that wants to learn from us and walk the road with us.
Thanks, Aline. And I see a lot of great things in the chat. Also, just to put out there, one of the ideas we are toying with, which we wanted to see if there is any interest in, is we've heard from some places about, there are 9 dimensions, there are 13 chapters in the book, different people working on different things. And is there a book club that you have, is what we've often been asked, where on a monthly basis there is a deep dive and whoever is interested can share their work or come in around that work. And I don't know if that's something which is of interest to people. It's come up a few times. We would be curious to hear that. And then Gigi, I know I had to hand it to you.
Thank you, Gunjan. I think that we'll be able to share all these opportunities for to continue learning as well in an after email. So just know that the opportunity is out there to continue engaging and also to understand how practically you can pick up those different elements, those core elements of what community-led development can be. I am extremely grateful for being able to share this platform as well with voices that have really lived and worked on community-led development throughout. And it's inspiring to listen to those journeys. And yeah, so big thanks for all of you, all the speakers, the co-authors, and the people that made the book available. And I just wanted to highlight two things. First of all, we've heard an answer to the questions that we're all dealing with from basically also the perspective of INGOs. So what can we do? How can we respond to this? But it's also an answer to a long and outstanding call for community-led development, just to recognize that it's just not an emerging issue. It's been a long call, and it's really nice to see that journey reflected as well. I just wanted to highlight that we have a couple of opportunities to learn or continue learning as well on these topics. Partos has had a community of practice on community-led development together with MCLD, Butterfly Works, and the Hunger Project. I'll drop a link so you can also access those resources. We have a lot of events coming up, so feel free to subscribe to our newsletter so you can also stay engaged. And for those that will be around or would like to come to the Netherlands, on the 6th of November, we have our Innovation Impulse event, which will be a moment in which we look forward to the changes that are necessary right now amidst the challenges that we're dealing with. Thank you so much. We will follow up with an email also to receive some of the feedback for this session, and we hope to see you soon. The chat or the links are shared in the chat right now. Have a wonderful day, and see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.